The gunshot echoed through the cathedral like the wrath of God himself. Marco Dante's hand didn't shake as he pressed the beretta against Vittorio Salvatore's temple. The man kneeling before him, the underboss who'd betrayed the Dante family for 30 pieces of silver and a promise of power, looked up with defiant hatred burning in his eyes. "You think killing me changes anything?" Vittorio spat blood onto the marble floor. "You think you've won? She's already dead, Marco. My baby sister found her 2 hours ago. Bleeding out in that artist's loft you thought was so clever. So secret." Marco's world tilted on its axis. "You're lying." "Am I?" Vittorio's smile was savage even with death seconds away. "Isabella doesn't know who you really are. Doesn't know her lover is the monster who's been hunting her brother for 6 months. But she'll figure it out when they tell her you put this bullet in my skull. And when she does, Marco Dante, you'll lose the only thing that ever made you human." Marco pulled the trigger. But as Vittorio's body crumpled to the cathedral floor, Marco was already running, because if there was even a 1% chance Isabella Salvatore was bleeding out in their secret apartment while he was executing her brother, then he'd just destroyed the only woman he'd ever loved with his own hands. This is the story of how the most dangerous man in Chicago fell in love with his enemy's sister. And how that love almost killed them both. 6 months earlier, Marco Dante stood in the rain outside Giovanni's, a restaurant in Little Italy that pretended to be legitimate but laundered money for half the crime families in Chicago. He was waiting for Vittorio Salvatore to make his move. The Salvatores had been a thorn in the Dante family's side for 3 generations. Old blood feuds, territorial disputes, the usual gangster bullshit that got men killed and widows made. Marco's father, Don Alessandro Dante, had spent 40 years trying to crush them. Now Marco, at 32, had inherited both the empire and the vendetta. Intelligence suggested Vittorio was skimming from the family coffers and making side deals with the Russians. Treachery like that demanded a response. Marco had been tracking him for weeks, building a case that would justify execution in front of the Commission, the council of family heads that governed Chicago's underworld. But that night, everything changed. She walked out of Giovanni's at exactly 10:47 p.m., pulling a thin jacket tighter against the October cold. Auburn hair that caught the streetlight like fire. Paint-stained jeans. Canvas bag over one shoulder. She moved through the rain with the kind of grace that made Marco forget, just for a moment, why he was there. Then Vittorio Salvatore stepped out behind her, calling, "Izzy, wait up. I'll drive you home." Marco's blood went cold. Vittorio had a sister. Marco knew that from intelligence files. Isabella Salvatore, 28, art teacher at Roosevelt University, lived alone in Wicker Park, no involvement in family business. She was supposed to be irrelevant. A footnote. She was not supposed to look like every dream Marco had locked away when he'd chosen the life of violence and power his birthright demanded. "I'm fine, Vito," Isabella called back. "It's 3 blocks. I'll walk. It's raining and it's Chicago. Let me drive you. You'll lecture me about my job the whole way. I'll take my chances with the rain." She smiled when she said it, affectionate exasperation, the kind of sibling dynamic Marco had never known. He'd been an only child, groomed from birth to lead, taught that love was weakness and family was transaction. Watching Isabella Salvatore tease her brother, Marco felt something foreign twist in his chest. Envy, maybe. Or recognition of something he'd never have. Vittorio laughed, shook his head, and let her go. Marco watched him head to his Cadillac, then made a decision that would alter the trajectory of his entire life. He followed her. Not as Marco Dante, heir to a crime empire. Just as a man with an umbrella and a need to understand why this woman's smile had hit him like a bullet to the chest. Isabella walked quickly despite the rain, head down, earbuds in. She didn't notice Marco pacing her from across the street. Professional surveillance training made following someone invisible, he'd done it 1,000 times. But this felt different. This felt like fate pulling him forward on a string he couldn't cut. She stopped outside a small gallery with "Community Art Space" painted on the window. Through the glass, Marco could see paintings on the walls, vibrant, emotional, alive. Isabella pulled out keys, unlocked the door, and disappeared inside. Marco stood in the rain for 5 full minutes, arguing with himself. This woman was Vittorio Salvatore's sister. Investigating her made strategic sense. Family connections could reveal weaknesses, leverages, opportunities. That's what he told himself as he crossed the street and pushed open the gallery door. Isabella looked up from where she was arranging canvases, startled but not afraid. "We're closed, sorry. Open hours are." "I'm not here for the gallery," Marco said, then realized how that sounded. "I mean, I saw the paintings through the window. They're beautiful. I just wanted to look. Smooth, Dante. Real smooth." But Isabella's expression softened. "Oh. Well, we're technically closed, but if you're quick." She gestured to the walls. Marco moved through the small space, genuinely looking at the art, neighborhood kids' self-portraits, abstract pieces bursting with color, a mural in progress depicting Chicago's skyline made from handprints. "You teach all this?" Marco asked. "Most of it, yeah. Community classes, after-school programs." Isabella wiped paint from her hands with a rag. "The kids do better work than I ever could. They haven't learned to censor themselves yet." "And you have?" Isabella met his eyes, and Marco felt the world narrow to just the two of them in that small, paint-smelling gallery. "Haven't we all?" she said quietly. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to Marco in years. He should have left. Should have filed her away as Vittorio's sister, not useful, and continued his hunt. But instead, he heard himself say, "I'm Marco. Isabella." She extended a paint-stained hand, and when Marco shook it, he felt electricity arc between them, not metaphorical, but real, physical, undeniable. She felt it too. He saw her eyes widen slightly, saw the way she pulled her hand back a fraction slower than necessary. "So, Marco, who's not here for the gallery," Isabella said, her voice slightly unsteady. "What are you here for?" "You," Marco thought. But he said, "I don't know yet." Isabella studied him, really looked at him, and Marco wondered what she saw. Did she see the killer underneath the tailored suit? The man who'd ordered executions before breakfast? The heir to an empire built on violence and fear? Or did she just see a man standing in an art gallery in the rain, looking at her like she was the only real thing in a world of shadows? "There's a coffee shop around the corner," Isabella said. "They're open for another hour. If you want to, not know together for a while." Marco knew the smart play. The safe play. Walk away. Continue the investigation from a distance. Don't complicate the mission with personal entanglement. "I'd like that," Marco said. And just like that, Marco Dante, who'd been trained since childhood to eliminate weakness, who'd built his reputation on cold calculation, who'd never let emotion compromise an operation, walked into the rain with Isabella Salvatore and let himself fall. Over the next 3 months, Marco lived 2 lives. By day, he was Marco Dante, crime lord, strategist, enforcer. He attended commission meetings, resolved territorial disputes, and continued building his case against Vittorio Salvatore. The evidence was damning: money transfers to Russian accounts, meetings with rival families, plans to undermine Dante operations from within. Vittorio Salvatore was a traitor. Marco's duty was clear. But by night, he was just Marco, the man who met Isabella at coffee shops and galleries and late-night diners. The man who learned she'd wanted to be a painter but chose teaching because art shouldn't be selfish. The man who discovered she hated her brother's business without knowing exactly what that business was. The man who, for the first time in his life, felt like someone saw him as human instead of weapon. Isabella never asked what Marco did for work. He'd told her, family business, import-export, which was technically true if you counted weapons and drugs as imports. She seemed content not to dig deeper, and Marco told himself he'd explain everything eventually. He was lying. To her. To himself. Because the truth was, every moment with Isabella felt like borrowed time. Every laugh, every touch, every whispered conversation in the dark of the loft apartment he'd rented under a false name, their secret space, their bubble, was stolen from the inevitable moment when she'd learn who he really was. And what he was going to do to her brother. "Tell me something real," Isabella said one night, lying beside Marco in the loft, city lights streaming through the industrial windows. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I tell you about my students, my art, my complicated relationship with my family. But you never talk about yours. Your father, your childhood, what made you into this?" She gestured at him, not his body, but something deeper. Marco stared at the ceiling. How could he explain Alessandro Dante, a man who taught his son that love was leverage and trust was liability? How could he describe growing up in a world where showing weakness meant death, where every friend was a potential betrayer, where his first kill at 17 had been a test of loyalty his father orchestrated? "My father raised me to be strong," Marco said carefully. "To never let anyone see vulnerability. To protect what's mine and destroy anything that threatens it." "That sounds lonely." "It is." Isabella turned on her side, propping herself up to look at him. "Is that why you won't let me in? Why there's always this wall between us?" "There's no wall. Marco." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I'm falling in love with you. But I can't love a ghost. I need to know the man underneath all this mystery." Marco's chest constricted. She was falling in love with him. This brilliant, beautiful woman who saw good in the world, who taught children to express themselves, who believed art could change lives, she was falling in love with a man who'd killed 16 people and was planning to execute her brother. He should tell her the truth. Right now. Confess everything and let her run. Instead, Marco pulled her close and whispered, "I'm falling in love with you too." It was the most honest and most cowardly thing he'd ever said. The end began on a Tuesday. Marco sat in his office at Dante Industries, the legitimate face of the family business, reviewing surveillance reports. Vittorio's betrayal was now irrefutable. He'd been selling Dante's shipment schedules to the Volkov Bratva, the Russian syndicate trying to muscle into Chicago territory. 6 Dante soldiers had died in ambushes over the past 4 months because of information Vittorio provided. Don Alessandro's voice crackled through the desk phone, "The commission meets Friday. Present your evidence. We vote on sanction." Sanction. The polite word for execution. "Understood," Marco said. "No hesitation, Marco. He's killed our men. He's betrayed his own family for profit. This is justice. Justice." Marco had believed in the concept once, his father's version, at least. An eye for an eye. Blood for blood. Maintain order through fear and consequence. But as he hung up the phone, all Marco could think about was Isabella's face when she learned the man she loved had murdered her brother. His phone buzzed. Text from Isabella, "Dinner tonight? My place. I'm making carbonara and want to show you something." Marco stared at the message. He should say no. Should start distancing himself now, before Friday's commission meeting and the inevitable execution order. Give himself, give her, time to prepare for the end. He texted back, "I'll bring wine." Because Marco Dante, who'd built his life on discipline and calculation, couldn't stay away from the one person who made him feel human. Isabella's apartment in Wicker Park was small but warm, exposed brick, plants on every surface, art covering the walls. The opposite of Marco's sterile penthouse downtown. Every time Marco stepped into her space, he felt like he was entering a different world where color and life and hope still existed. "Okay, don't freak out," Isabella said as Marco uncorked the wine. "But I need to tell you something." Marco's hand stilled on the bottle. This was it. She'd figured out who he was. Some detail had clicked, and now she was going to, "I'm going to quit my job." Marco exhaled. "What?" I know. Stable income, benefits, responsible adult choices." Isabella was pacing now, nervous energy radiating off her. "But I got offered a residency. In New York. At the Tribeca Art Collective. It's 6 months, full funding, and they want me to develop a series exploring urban identity through portraiture." She turned to face Marco, eyes bright with equal parts excitement and terror. "It's everything I've wanted since I was 20. Everything I gave up when I chose stability over dreams." Marco's mind raced. New York. 6 months. She'd be gone. Safe from the fallout when he executed Vittorio. She'd never have to know what Marco really was. This was perfect. An escape hatch. The universe offering him a way to love her and protect her by letting her go. "That's incredible, Isabella," Marco said, meaning it. "You should absolutely go." Her face fell slightly. "Oh. I thought. I wasn't sure how you'd react." "How did you want me to react?" Isabella moved closer, taking his hands. "I want you to come with me." Marco's world stopped. "I know it's crazy," Isabella continued. "We've only been together 3 months. But Marco, I've never felt like this about anyone. You're the first person who makes me want to be selfish. To choose art over responsibility. To choose my happiness over everyone's expectations. Come to New York with me. Leave the family business or run it remotely or whatever you need to do. Just, be with me." Marco looked into her eyes, green as spring leaves, full of hope and trust and love, and felt something break inside his chest. She was offering him a way out. A new life. The chance to be the man she thought he was instead of the monster he actually was. All he had to do was abandon his father, his family, his duty, and let Vittorio Salvatore walk away unpunished while Dante's soldiers stayed dead and unavenged. "I can't," Marco heard himself say. "Why not?" "Isabella." Marco pulled away, the weight of his secrets crushing him. "There are things about me you don't know. Things about my life, my family, what I do, then tell me." Isabella's voice was urgent now. "Marco, whatever it is, we can work through it. I don't care if your family's difficult or if your business is complicated or if, I'm going to kill your brother." The words fell between them like stones down a well. Marco hadn't meant to say it. Hadn't planned to confess. But the desperation in her voice, the absolute trust in her eyes, he couldn't let her love a lie anymore. Isabella went very still. "What did you say?" "Vittorio. He's betrayed people I'm sworn to protect. He's gotten soldiers killed. On Friday, I'm presenting evidence to the commission, and they'll vote to sanction him. To execute him. And I'm the one who'll carry it out. This is a joke." Isabella's voice was hollow. "Some kind of sick joke. I wish it was. You're telling me you're going to murder my brother." Isabella backed toward the wall, hand over her mouth. "You're telling me you're some kind of, what? Mafia enforcer? And you've been planning this the whole time we've been together?" "No. I've been trying to find a way to avoid it the whole time we've been together." "By lying to me?" Isabella's voice cracked. "By making me fall in love with you while you hunted my brother?" I didn't plan to fall in love with you. Marco's hands clenched into fists. I followed you from Giovanni's to get intelligence. Strategic advantage. But then I met you, and everything changed. You changed me, Isabella. I swear I've been trying to find another way. Get out. Isabella, please, get out. She grabbed a coffee mug from the counter and hurled it at Marco's head. He dodged, and it shattered against the wall. You're a monster. You've been lying to me for 3 months. You've been using me. And now you're telling me you're going to murder my brother and expecting me to what? Understand? Forgive you. I'm telling you because I love you. Marco's voice was raw. Because I can't let you go to New York thinking I'm something I'm not. Because you deserve the truth, even if it destroys us. The truth? Isabella laughed, a broken sound. You wouldn't know truth if it killed you. My brother might be involved in shady business, Marco, but he's still my brother. He raised me after our parents died. He put me through college. He's flawed and complicated and sometimes makes terrible choices, but he's family. And you want to execute him like he's nothing? He's gotten people killed, so have you. Isabella shouted. Or are you going to pretend you're somehow better? That your murders are justified because they're sanctioned by some criminal council? Marco had no answer. Because she was right. I want you to leave, Isabella said, quieter now, tears streaming down her face. I want you to leave and never come back and forget we ever met. I can't forget you. Then add it to your list of things to live with. Isabella turned away, shoulders shaking. Goodbye, Marco. Marco stood frozen, every instinct screaming at him to fight, to explain, to make her understand. But there was nothing to understand. He was exactly what she'd called him, a monster. So he did the only thing he could do. He left. And as he walked out of her warm, art-filled apartment into the cold Chicago night, Marco realized he'd just lost the only thing that ever made his miserable, violent life worth living. Friday's commission meeting lasted 4 hours. Marco presented his evidence against Vittorio Salvatore with clinical precision. Bank records. Intercepted communications. Testimony from a Volkov lieutenant they'd captured. The betrayal was comprehensive, calculated, and had cost Dante and allied families significant blood and treasure. The vote was unanimous, death. Don Alessandro clasped Marco's shoulder afterward. You've proven yourself, son. This is your ascension. When you execute Salvatore tomorrow, you'll be showing Chicago that the Dante family doesn't forgive betrayal. Marco nodded, numb. That night, alone in his penthouse, Marco stared at his phone. Isabella hadn't called. Hadn't texted. He'd been checking obsessively for 3 days, hoping for, what? Forgiveness? Understanding? Some miracle that would make this right? There was no making this right. At 2 a.m., his phone finally buzzed. But it wasn't Isabella. It was Vittorio. Marco Dante. Didn't expect you to have my sister's boyfriend's number saved. Marco's blood turned to ice. How did you really think I wouldn't find out? Vittorio's voice was cold rage. I've had you followed for weeks. Watched you play house with my baby sister. Watched her fall in love with the man who's been planning to put a bullet in my head. Vittorio, she doesn't know yet. Doesn't know who you really are. I could tell her. Could show her photos, prove that Marco the import-export guy is really Marco Dante, heir to the family I've been fighting my whole life. Vittorio paused. Or we could make a deal. What kind of deal? You let me disappear. Fake my death if you have to, tell your commission I'm handled. In exchange, Isabella never learns the truth about you. She goes to New York, builds her art career, and remembers you as the guy who wasn't ready for commitment. Not as the monster who murdered her brother. Marco's mind raced. She already knows. Silence. Then, what? I told her Tuesday. Everything. Who I am, what I was planning to do to you. She threw me out of her apartment. Vittorio laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You told her. Jesus, Dante, you really do love her, don't you? Yes. Then you understand why I have to kill you. The line went dead. Marco was moving before conscious thought caught up, grabbing his Beretta, calling his security team, running for the elevator. But even as he speed-dialed Isabella's number, dread settled in his gut like poison. She wasn't answering. Marco kicked in the door to Isabella's apartment at 2:47 a.m. The lights were off. The space was empty. Isabella. No response. Marco moved through the apartment like a man possessed, checking rooms, closets, anywhere she might be hiding or hurt or, his phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number, St. Michael's Cathedral. Come alone. Come unarmed. Or I'll make her death slow. The attached photo showed Isabella bound to a chair in candlelit darkness, duct tape over her mouth, terror in her eyes. Marco's vision went red. He called Vincent, his second in command. St. Michael's Cathedral. Vittorio Salvatore has Isabella. I'm going in. Boss, it's obviously a trap, I don't care. Mobilize everyone. Surround the cathedral but don't move until I give the signal. If I die, you kill Vittorio and get Isabella out. Marco, that's an order. Marco drove through empty streets at 90 miles per hour, mind cycling through every tactical scenario. Vittorio was smart, ruthless, and had nothing to lose. He'd chosen St. Michael's for a reason. The old cathedral in Pilsen had been abandoned for years, perfect for an ambush. But Marco didn't care about the tactical disadvantage. Didn't care that he was walking into a trap. Didn't care that he was violating every strategic principle his father had drilled into him. Isabella was in danger because of him. Because he'd dragged her into his world of violence and consequence. Because he'd been selfish enough to love her when he should have stayed away. If she died, Marco would die with her. And he'd take Vittorio Salvatore to hell personally. St. Michael's Cathedral loomed against the night sky like a Gothic nightmare, crumbling stone, broken stained glass, gargoyles watching from parapets. Marco approached the front entrance, hands raised, Beretta tucked at his back despite Vittorio's demands. He was many things, but suicidal wasn't one of them. Marco Dante. Vittorio's voice echoed from inside. I'm impressed. Most men would have brought an army. I brought an army. They're surrounding this building. Marco stepped through the heavy wooden doors into candlelit darkness. If you hurt her, they'll burn this cathedral down with you inside. Touching. Really? Vittorio emerged from the shadows, gun pointed at Marco. 20 feet away, Isabella sat bound to a chair near the altar, mascara-streaked and shaking but alive. But I don't think you're in a position to threaten me. Marco forced himself not to look at Isabella. If he looked at her, he'd lose focus. He'd make a mistake. And mistakes got people killed. What do you want, Vittorio? What do I want? Vittorio laughed, the sound echoing off vaulted ceilings. I want to not be executed by a crime family for trying to secure my own future. I want to not live in fear that my father's old grudges will get me killed. I want my sister to stop looking at me like I'm a disappointment because I chose survival over morality. So you betray your family and get soldiers killed? I made deals to protect myself. Vittorio shouted. Your father would have killed me eventually anyway. The Salvatores have always been expendable to the Dantes. So I chose to be valuable to someone else. And Isabella? Where does she fit into your survival plan? Vittorio's expression shifted, something raw and pained breaking through. Isabella is the only good thing to come from our cursed bloodline. She's everything I'm not, kind, talented, uncorrupted by this world. And you, he swung the gun toward Marco. You seduced her. Used her to get to me. Made her love you while planning to kill her brother. I love her. You love her. Vittorio's voice was incredulous. You're Marco Dante. You don't love anything except power. I love her, Marco repeated, louder. I never planned to. I tried to walk away. But I love her, Vittorio. More than the family business. More than my duty. More than the vendetta. I love her enough to let you kill me if it means she walks out of here alive. Silence fell over the cathedral. Then Isabella's muffled voice, frantic behind the tape, MMPH. NNNGH. Vittorio moved toward her, ripping the tape away. Isabella gasped, coughed, then shouted, Marco, he's going to kill you both. Shut up, Izzy, no. Isabella struggled against her bonds. Vito, listen to me. Whatever you think is happening here, you're wrong. Marco isn't using me. He told me everything 3 days ago, who he is, what he planned to do to you, all of it. He could have kept lying. Could have let me go to New York never knowing the truth. But he told me because he loves me. He was hunting me the night you met, Vittorio said harshly. Does that sound like love? No. It sounds like a man doing his duty until something more important came along. Isabella looked directly at Marco now, and he saw her eyes were red from crying but clear with certainty. I've spent 3 days hating him. Hating what he is. Hating that he lied. But Marco, I don't hate you. I hate this world you live in. I hate that love and violence are so tangled up you can't separate them. I hate that choosing me means betraying your family, and choosing your family means losing me. Marco's chest constricted. Isabella, but I don't hate you. Tears streamed down her face. I should. But I don't. Touching, Vittorio said flatly. But it doesn't change the facts. Marco's family wants me dead. The only way I survive is if he dies and I disappear before the Dantes regroup. He raised the gun, pointing it at Marco's chest. So here's how this ends, I kill Marco Dante. You go to New York like you planned. And you forget both of us ever existed. Vito, please, it's the only way you stay clean, Izzy. The only way you don't get dragged into this war. Marco saw Vittorio's finger tighten on the trigger. Saw the resignation in his eyes. Saw the moment Vittorio committed to the shot. Marco moved. Not to draw his own weapon. Not to dodge. He moved toward Isabella. The gunshot was deafening in the closed space. Marco felt the bullet punch through his shoulder, spinning him sideways, but his momentum carried him to Isabella's chair. He crashed into her, knocking them both to the ground, his body covering hers. Marco! Isabella screamed. But Marco was already rolling, drawing his Beretta with his good hand, firing 3 shots in Vittorio's direction. Not kill shots, he couldn't, not with Isabella watching, but enough to drive Vittorio back behind a stone pillar. Vincent, now! Marco shouted into his calm. The cathedral doors exploded inward. Vincent and 20 Dante soldiers poured through the entrance like an avenging army. Vittorio fired wildly, trying to break through the line, but he was outgunned and outmaneuvered. Stand down! Marco's voice echoed through the chaos. Take him alive! Vincent's team swarmed Vittorio, disarming him and forcing him to his knees. The whole operation took less than 30 seconds. Marco collapsed beside Isabella, blood soaking through his shoulder, pain screaming through every nerve. But he forced himself to stay conscious, forced himself to look at her. "Are you okay?" he managed. Isabella stared at him, shock and disbelief warring on her face. "You took a bullet for me." "Of course I did. You could have died." "I would have." Marco reached up with his good hand to touch her face. "I'd die 1,000 times before I let him hurt you." "You're insane," Isabella whispered. But she was crying, and her hand covered his, pressing it against her cheek like a lifeline. Vincent appeared over them. "Boss, we need to get you to a doctor." "Vittorio?" "Secured. What do you want us to do with him?" Marco looked past Vincent to where Vittorio knelt, blood streaming from a graze wound on his temple, hatred and defeat in his eyes. Then Marco looked at Isabella, the woman he loved, the woman he'd almost lost, the woman who was looking at him like he was both her nightmare and her salvation. "Let him go," Marco said. The cathedral went silent. Vincent stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Boss, the commission ordered." "I don't care what the commission ordered. Let him go." Marco pushed himself upright, gasping with pain. "Give him money, new identity, transport to anywhere he wants. But he disappears. Tonight." "Marco, your father will." "My father isn't here." "I am. And I'm telling you to let him go." Vittorio was staring at Marco like he was seeing him for the first time. "Why?" Marco met his eyes. "Because I love your sister. And she'd never forgive me if I killed you. So you get one chance, Vittorio. One. You take it and disappear, or you refuse and die. Choose." Vittorio looked at Isabella, something broken and sad crossing his face. "I'm sorry, Izzy. For all of it." "Vito." Isabella's voice cracked. "Go to New York. Make beautiful art. Forget you ever had a brother." Vittorio looked back at Marco. "And you? You hurt her, and I'll come back from whatever hole I crawl into and kill you myself. Understood?" Vincent hauled Vittorio to his feet. As they led him toward a side exit, Vittorio called back one last time, "Isabella. I love you. I'm sorry I was never the brother you deserved." Then he was gone. Isabella collapsed against Marco, sobbing into his chest. Marco held her with his good arm, blood and tears and pain mixing together in the candlelit darkness of St. Michael's Cathedral. "I've got you," Marco whispered. "I've got you, and I'm never letting go." 3 days later, Marco stood in his father's office, arm in a sling, waiting for judgment. Don Alessandro Dante sat behind his massive oak desk, expression unreadable. "You disobeyed a direct commission order. Let a sanctioned target escape. Compromised family security for a woman." "Yes, sir. You understand this makes you look weak. Makes the family look weak. Other organizations will see this as vulnerability." "I understand." "Then explain to me, Marco," Don Alessandro's voice was steel, "why I shouldn't strip you of your position and exile you from this family." Marco met his father's eyes. For 32 years, he'd been afraid of this man. Desperate for his approval. Terrified of his disappointment. Now, Marco felt nothing but clarity. "Because for the first time in my life, I made a choice based on love instead of fear. Because Isabella Salvatore is worth more than 1,000 commission orders. Because if being strong means killing people to prove I can, then I don't want to be strong. I want to be human. Human." Don Alessandro stood, moving to the window overlooking Chicago. "Your mother used to say something similar. Before this life hardened her. Before she learned that love is liability. Maybe she was right the first time." Don Alessandro was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Vittorio Salvatore is in Prague. New identity, new life. Your people did thorough work. Thank you. Don't thank me. I didn't do it for him. I did it for you. Don Alessandro turned to face Marco. You're my son. My heir. And despite this spectacular act of defiance, you've proven yourself more capable than any man I've trained. So here's what's going to happen, you're going to marry that girl. Make it legitimate. And you're going to transition half our operations to legitimate businesses within 5 years. Marco stared. What? You heard me. This family has survived 3 generations through violence and fear. Maybe it's time we tried something different. Maybe it's time we became what we've always pretended to be, a real business empire instead of a criminal one. You're letting me reform the family. I'm letting you try. You fail, we go back to the old ways. But Marco, Don Alessandro's voice softened almost imperceptibly, I never wanted this life for you. I wanted you safe, powerful, secure. If you can build that through legitimate means, then you're a better man than I ever was. Marco felt something loosen in his chest. Not forgiveness, they were too far down this path for that. But understanding, maybe. Permission to be something different. Thank you, Father. Don Alessandro nodded once, then, now get out of my office and go see your woman. She's been calling for 3 days. Isabella's apartment looked the same as the last time Marco had seen it, warm, art-filled, alive. But when she opened the door, everything was different. Hi, Marco said, suddenly uncertain. Hi. Isabella stepped aside. Come in. They stood in her living room, 3 feet apart, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. I'm sorry, Marco said finally. For lying. For dragging you into my world. For being exactly the monster you called me. You're not a monster. Isabella, you're not. She moved closer. You're a man who was raised in violence and taught that strength means cruelty. But you chose differently. You let my brother live. You took a bullet for me. You defied your entire family because you loved me more than you feared them. Isabella reached up to touch Marco's face. That's not a monster. That's a man learning to be human. I don't know how to be human. I've been a weapon my whole life. Then I'll teach you. Isabella smiled, sad and hopeful and determined. The same way you protected me when I was helpless. We'll protect each other. From your world, from my doubts, from everything that tries to tell us this is impossible. What about New York? Your residency? I deferred it. Told them I had personal circumstances that required more time. Isabella's hand slid down to rest over Marco's heart. My personal circumstance is you. And I'm not leaving until we figure out if this love is real or just Stockholm Syndrome mixed with really good chemistry. Marco laughed, actual, genuine laughter that felt rusty and foreign and wonderful. I love you, Isabella Salvatore. I'll probably love you until the day someone finally kills me. And if you'll have me, broken, violent, trying to learn how to be good, I'll spend the rest of my life proving you didn't make a mistake. I know I didn't make a mistake. Isabella pulled him down to kiss her, gentle and fierce and absolutely certain. Because the man I love isn't the crime lord. It's the man underneath, the one who's brave enough to change. Epilogue. 18 months later the gallery opening in Tribeca was packed, art collectors, critics, society people, all admiring Isabella Dante's debut solo exhibition. The series, titled Underneath, explored the hidden humanity in unexpected places, portraits of her students, cityscapes revealing beauty in decay, and a central piece that had everyone talking. It was a massive canvas showing a man in a cathedral, half his face in shadow, half in candlelight. One hand reaching toward the viewer, the other holding a gun. The expression was complex, dangerous, protective, broken, and determined. The placard read, "The monster who loved me." Marco stood in the corner, watching Isabella work the room with the same confidence she brought to everything. She wore a green dress that matched her eyes, and every time she glanced his way, she smiled like he was the only person in the world. Vincent appeared at Marco's elbow. "Boss, the Chicago deal closed. We're officially legitimate in 6 out of 10 operations." "Good." Marco accepted a champagne flute from a passing waiter. "Tell the team they'll see bonuses by end of quarter. Your father called. Said he's proud of you." "Which is weird, honestly." Marco smiled. "New era, Vincent. We're allowed to have feelings now. Don't push it." As Vincent disappeared into the crowd, Isabella made her way over, sliding under Marco's arm like she belonged there. Which she did. "They love it," she said, gesturing at the exhibition. 3 pieces sold already, and someone from the Whitney wants to discuss a future show. I'm not surprised. You're brilliant. I'm serious about art. There's a difference. Isabella looked up at him. What do you think about the centerpiece? Too on the nose. Marco studied the monster who loved me, his own face staring back at him, rendered with unflinching honesty. Isabella had captured something he'd never seen in a mirror, the moment between violence and humanity, when choice mattered more than nature. "It's perfect," Marco said quietly. "It's exactly who I was when you found me." "And who are you now?" Marco pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "I'm the man who chose you. And who gets to keep choosing you, every day, for the rest of our lives." Isabella smiled against his chest. "Good answer." Later that night, alone in their apartment overlooking Manhattan, Isabella curled against Marco's side and whispered, "Tell me something real." It was their ritual now, the same question she'd asked months ago in Chicago, when he'd been too afraid to answer honestly. "I used to think love was weakness," Marco said. "That caring about someone gave them power over you. That the only way to survive in my world was to never let anyone matter. And now? Now I know love is the only thing that makes surviving worth it. You made me human again, Isabella. You made me want to be more than my father's weapon. And if that's weakness, then I'll be weak for the rest of my life." Isabella pressed a kiss to his jaw. "For a reformed crime lord, you're surprisingly romantic. Reformed is generous. I'm still cleaning up a lot of messes. But you're cleaning them up. That's what matters." Isabella settled deeper into his arms. "We're building something good out of something broken. And that's the most beautiful art I've ever made." Marco held her close, listening to her breathing slow as she drifted towards sleep. Outside their window, New York glittered, a city full of 8 million stories, most of them invisible, all of them vital. This was theirs, the crime lord learning to be gentle, the artist teaching him how. The impossible love story that should have ended in a cathedral with bullets and blood but instead ended here, in warmth and safety and the kind of quiet happiness Marco had never thought he deserved. Sometimes the wrong person is exactly right. Sometimes monsters become men. Sometimes love doesn't just change you, it saves you. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to choose humanity over power, you get the one thing you never knew you needed, a reason to keep choosing it, every single day. The end.